Good evening and welcome to 2015 Mock Ad Hoc. I'm your host, Johnny B, and I help fantasy owners prepare for the preseason and get you ready for your live draft coming in either August or September. We're very excited to have you back. If you're joining us again, welcome back. And just want to introduce my panel real quick. He's Dave Delmonico, Seahawk fan. Dave, how you doing tonight?
Doing all right. How you doing, John?
Doing well. Quinn, thanks for coming back on the show. How are you tonight?
Doing great. Glad to be here. Week number 2. Very excited to get some more knowledge out here.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, this show is really dedicated for a sequential mock draft. That's hence our name, Mock Ad Hoc. And but we're going to kind of go for an audible tonight. We're going to go Omaha. And we're actually going to start the show off with a little ad hoc item. So here we go. Found this in my garage. Take a look at this, fellas. This is a board game. It's a very old board game. I had to dust it off. This is my dad's. He used to play it a long time ago. I've never played it, but I found it. Take a guess, real quick, Dave. What year do you think this came out?
Say 76.
Quinn?
I'm going to go earlier. Just the graphics, the sweet chops on that kid, and it's kind of like the Joe Namath color scheme there. I'm going to say within a year or two of the Jets Super Bowl, let's say 71.
That's a pretty close guess by both of you. Actually, the year is 1974. This game came out. And the reason why I bring this game up is it totally aligns with what we're talking about tonight. So we're going to talk about the auction-style draft. And this game, I think it was ahead of its time, right? So back when my dad was playing it, and it's been in my garage forever. But the auction-style draft, it gives you a chance to be the franchise owner. You got to put yourself in the shoes of a sea captain here. You're steering the ship. Which way do you want to go, and how do you want to run this thing? So tonight we're going to talk about the 2015 version of a mock ad hoc auction draft. And so we're going to kick it around, and we're going to get started on some strategy, because this is how we're going to help you prepare as an owner as you go into your auction draft. Maybe you've never played in one. These things are taken off. I'll tell you, a lot of the forums I see, a lot of conversation revolves around, hey, I'm the number 9th pick in my sequential serpentine draft, and I don't like it. I want to have a free bidding system to where I can go after anybody I want, and hey, it's a free-for-all. It's eBay. So Dave, let's go to you first here. You're in an auction-style draft. What's your strategy here?
Well, yeah, it's a chance to be Jerry Jones instead of, owner Jerry Jones instead of general manager Jerry Jones, right? Except you only got a $200 budget to work with. So when I'm going in, I think my draft strategy is similar to a snake draft, but I think you got to be a little more cognizant of your tiers of players, because the value, although the player order is going to be similar as far as your rankings, the value is tiered a little bit more. So you got top tier running backs, top tier wide receivers, and maybe a few quarterbacks that are worth $30, $40, maybe even $45 that you're going to jump up and grab if there's value there. So it's really about value picks. I like to go strong running back. I need one horse. I need one big running back. I want Adrian Peterson, LaShawn McCoy, Jamal Charles. One of those guys looks remotely properly valued. Somebody doesn't bid him up high enough. In the first 5 or 6 guys, I think seven guys, you got Forte, C.J. Anderson, Marshawn Lynch, Le'Veon Bell, Eddie Lacy. You want to get one of those guys. And then later in the draft, you can add a whole bunch of guys for $5, $3, $2. You want 4 or 5 other backs that are going to be your number 2. Then I start grabbing wide receivers, and I wait. My 4th or 5th pick is probably going to be a quarterback, somebody in that mid-level range. I think the one I did last week, I got 2 quarterbacks for a total of $5. 2 quarterbacks, $5. I got Tony Romo for $3 and Cam Newton for $2. But I ended up paying $53 for LaShawn McCoy, but Randall was my second running back for $8. So I got a certain budget in mind for each category, like maybe $75 for running backs, maybe $100 for wide receivers, and I'm going to wait on a tight end. I'm not jumping up and paying $30 or $40 or $50 for Gronkowski or $30 for Jimmy Graham. I'm going to wait. There's a bunch of guys for $1 and $2 at the end of the draft. Tight ends, if you don't get one of the top guys and invest, just wait. Lots of tight ends, lots of number 2 running backs who may or may not hit, lots of number 3 wide receivers, but 1 running back, 2 really good receivers, 1 or 2 solid mid-level quarterbacks, plenty of guys out there.
So Quinn here, we're gonna throw this back to you, and I like how Davis set the precedence. A majority of the leagues out there run a fake cash stash of about $200, right? I think that's pretty standard. And what we're talking about here, just so all the listeners know, we're going to use the example of a standard league tonight. We're not going to talk about PPR. We're certainly not going to talk about dynasty or keeper leagues. We're going to talk about just a redraft league. So, Quinn, talk to me about the guy who just goes guns blazing, Wild Bill style. He's spending way too much money. What do you do about a guy like that?
I think that's okay. I mean, to parallel that to regular life, I mean, we've all been to, charity auctions where there's a $200 item, people get psyched up and they spend $500 for it. That's life. Adrenaline kicks in, and people's personal opinion pop in. They think so-and-so is better than the other person, or it's their favorite player. So I'm going to take the wait-and-see approach. I'm going to let these other people blow their wad early, and the only time I'm going to step up to the plate in that situation is if I feel the person at the position I need is far superior to the person below them. Say I'm on the number 5 quarterback and the number 6 is way below them, then I may step up to the plate. But most of the time, I'm going to sit back. I'm going to let that Wild Bill get his guns blazing and blow his wad so that I can slide in, because that's where analysis comes in, not only what position you need, but the level of the player that's available at that time.
That's it, Quinn. That's exactly kind of what I was talking about. Is you reach that tier where you've got this guy, you think this guy's in the first tier. If you can get a second running back there, great. But you don't want to overpay for that guy. You want to go into that second tier when you're ready to fall to the third tier for $1 or $2. If you can snag that $8, Joseph Randall, who might be a stud behind what might be the best offensive line in football, maybe that's a great number 2 back. Maybe Martin from Tampa Bay, maybe he ends up coming back and being great again. Maybe not, But you got to take some chances on those number 2 guys who might have potential.
Yeah, my perfect example, Johnny B, is really with quarterbacks. The last 5, 6, 7 years, we got the Elite 4. Now we've got the Elite 5 with Andrew Luck, maybe replacing Drew Brees. And I remember last year's draft, really, if I didn't get those Elite 5, there was no difference in my mind between 6 and 11. Did it really matter if you had Roethlisberger or Rivers or Romo or any of those people? So they were all kind of on the same level. Throw Cam Newton in there. 5 or 6 through 11 are the same. So I'm not going to step up and spend $30 for the number 6 quarterback when I think he's not really much better than the number 11 quarterback that I can get for $3. So at that point, I would shift my strategy. The big 4 are gone. I'm now going to go to the next available wide receiver or running back and know that I'm going to get a top-tier quarterback for $3, $2, or whatever it is, instead of spending $50 to try to be the next guy to get the quarterback.
Right. So I think also, for the listeners out there, I think Quinn brings up some good points, but also you got to know your league settings, because what we've kind of glossed over here is, know your league settings. If your quarterbacks get more than 4 points for a touchdown, this may sway your decision. What we're talking about is a very standard league tonight on this show. But, hey, size up, know your rules, know your league constitution like we preach all the time, and then go to the auction draft coming in like that. Dave, could you ever see a situation where your first pick is a quarterback?
No. Absolutely not. And last year was a good example. Aaron Rodgers was going off the board early. A lot of people took him, and he's a great pick. You can't really go wrong. But like Quinn said, the difference, the separation in those guys is not great enough. You can get a guy who's pretty close to Rodgers with your second pick if you really feel that strongly about it. And the other thing that Quinn was talking about, watch the draft flow. If you take a look at the big board, if you can get that snapshot, whether it's on a big board like you got behind you or online where you can see the grid, know that everybody else has got a quarterback. You had a 10-team league and 9 guys have taken quarterbacks, guess what? You don't have to pick a quarterback right now. Wait, they've all got quarterbacks. If everybody's got all their running backs, start taking receivers because they're not going to pick running backs. They need the receivers that you're taking. So you can game them a little bit too. And try to watch these guys. If you got an idiot who wears a San Francisco 49ers hat and you know he's going to pick Hyde in the second round because he loves him, you know he picks Frank Gore every year because he loves Frank Gore. Know your guys in your league. Understand what they might want. The guy went to USC. The guy went to Cal. You know he's going to pick those guys. The Cal guy's going to take Marshawn Lynch 2 picks earlier than I would because he wants him because he went to college with him or whatever. Know their tendencies and understand what they're going to do. Especially if a guy had Odell Beckham Jr. last year, wait for him to pick him 5 or 6 picks or a round earlier because he's got to have him again.
Yeah, right. So Quinn, we're gonna kind of spin it up here a little bit. What about this concept called bean counting? Right, you got auction drafts that go on. Right, we talked about a $200 purse budget we're dealing with. This is fake money. Once you determine whether the draft is bullish or bearish, kind of like the stock market, you may want to scare off some other owners, like raising a low opening bid on a high-priced player. So it seems like most of the auctions coming in typically just raise by $1, right? So, hey, you got Aaron Rodgers going for $38. Somebody else will say, well, I'll take him for $39. Is that a bluff, Quinn? I mean, wouldn't you want to tack on a little bit more than $1?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's part of a strategy. It's a little bit of a poker game. You're not going to want someone who's so eager to get it for bottom dollar. You're definitely going to ride it up a little bit. But again, I think it's really about your need. And if I could go back onto what Dave said, you know, I've never been a quarterback guy in 25 years of fantasy football. I've changed my philosophy on that. It's a quarterback-driven league now,
Right.
and I would never take a quarterback in the first round. But this year, I would if I could get one of the top 4. You know, if I could get Luck or Rodgers, I probably would take them. So it's a little bit different philosophy. But I'm not going to bid up to take them. I'm going to let somebody else spend their money early and get that person they have to have, and then I'm going to have a lot more value with a lot of money sitting in my pocket, sitting back, because you know I come in prepared knowing what I want, but I never let the direction of a draft or an auction dictate what I'm going to do. I know what I want, but I'll never step up and spend too much for somebody.
Yeah.
Because like you said, let somebody else pay double.
Yeah.
And you see it, like you said, you can parallel that to the stock market where people are going to go crazy and jump on Google or Apple or GoPro or whatever after it's already gone up for 100 days. Or you can sit back and let it split and come back a little bit and jump in there. And that's kind of my philosophy, the wait and see. I'm not going to get too excited about any particular player. I'm just going to go with value and best available. I don't need a quarterback in the first round, or I don't need a running back. You got to take the best available on the board.
Keep buying out.
So Dave, if we talk about kind of the managing your bucks aspect in an auction draft, a rule of thumb is usually to check on other owners. Kind of let that wandering eyeball check out and see, hey, what's the other guy doing, right? I'm concentrating on my own draft, on my own research, but the casually wandering eye records kind of the happenings of the other guys, and then you can keep track of the moves. I think this will greatly help you out if you sneak a peek or two.
Oh, don't be casual, and don't be afraid to call somebody out. Go right after him. If you got a guy who's sitting on money, go, hey, you gonna pick a running back? You got no way. You got 4 receivers. We're in the middle of the 5th round. You what are you doing? Put some pressure on him to spend some money. How come you're not bidding? How come you still got $150 left? There's mind games happening, but don't be afraid to make notes. If you're not getting it on the computer where you can see everybody's how much money they've got left, make notes. Keep track of people. Call them out. Put some pressure on them. It's all part of the game. It's all part of the fun.
Right.
Dig into your friend. Don't let them sit there with $190 when you're down to 50.
Absolutely. Right. I'm going to throw up something right now to everybody who's watching us on the feed here. So I'm just going to screen share something right now. Let me know when you can see it up here. Can everybody see that?
There it is.
I can see it, Johnny B.
All right, good. So what you're looking at is a graph that I've devised here, and you can easily see there's a huge bowling ball. It's 1,000 pounds. I've indicated that in the middle. And at the top here, you're looking at something we call freedom in an auction draft. At the very bottom, you see where it says auction budget depleted. In the middle, you got smart bids and then danger zone. What I've done strategically here in an auction style draft, and this is my opinion, again, I wrote a book here on upside down drafting, but if you put a wedge underneath that bowling ball, that's naturally going to descend, right, because it's so heavy. You start with $200 and you get a guy like Wild Bill going after it, and before you know it, you're all out of money.
I want to know what's holding up the wedge.
Yeah, so what's essentially holding up this wedge, though?
Well, Dave, it is Shark Week. It kind of looks like a shark fin.
There you go.
Yeah, you know, and essentially what you want to do here is start off by going with maybe a wide receiver 1, a wide receiver 2, saving those dollars for later, and then throwing darts at some running backs that you can pick up for later. And that's kind of been my MO. That's kind of been my justification for an auction draft. I wanted to kind of get your opinion on that from both of you. So let's start with you, Dave. What do you think about my drawing there?
The drawing is outstanding. I like Quinn's shark analogy. That would push it uphill a little bit. I'm wondering who's the #1 wide receiver for the 49ers this year?
That's probably going to be, Torrey Smith?
Torrey Smith. I want to make sure you're paying attention. He's not a #1 wide receiver in fantasy, so everybody else out there, pay attention. He's still a #2, not a #1. I don't have a problem with the wide receiver strategy. I think there's so many talented guys, but again, you're tiered. Right, you've got 6 or 8 guys. You got your Julio Jones, Antonio Brown, Demaryius Thomas, Dez Bryant. Yeah, you can probably throw Odell Beckham Jr., Jordy Nelson, Calvin Johnson up into that top tier, and you still got guys like AJ Green who might be so good to go into that top tier. Alshon Jeffrey might put himself in there with Brandon Marshall gone, and some coaching changes there that are going to be beneficial to that offense. So, you know, there's so many talented wide receivers, you can't have enough of them. If you can get a couple top-tier guys, you're going to give yourself an advantage per position over some other teams that went running back heavy. And, hey, one of those running backs gets hurt, which they do more often than receivers. One of those running back ends up in a timeshare after the 3rd or 4th or 5th game. Now all of a sudden you got 2 stud receivers, 3 stud receivers. It's a viable way to go about it for sure.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I think, and what I did was, auction drafts often give you the freedom to exercise enormous financial decisions, right? So if you're going into one of these things, you're like, oh man, I got this money and I got to protect it. But I think most fantasy experts will advise you to look at some sort of cheat sheet or software. But in my opinion, this is kind of where I boldly bid on the wideouts, taking them early because of exactly what Dave just said. If a running back's so fragile and you just spent all your money on a guy that you thought was going to be your #1 and he's totally depleted for the season, now you're out and you're scrambling on the waiver wire. So the wedge, by inserting this wedge, I can kind of, basically I can absorb that shock from a wide receiver coming into my lineup, and then also I don't have to spend it on glamorous running backs. I can actually avoid those fragile running backs, and then muster up the energy to save my money for later. And then now I'm in the freedom zone of auctions where I can get those running backs later. And we talked about some rookie running backs earlier in the last show, and that's kind of my ideal auction. What do you think about kind of what we're talking about there?
Yeah, again, I'm going to play more conservative, not because I am conservative, but more that I'm just going to sit back. I don't need the top tier guys. A lot of people will say, hey, I need to have first running back that's going to get me 20 points a week. But if your second running back's only getting you 6 or 7, what's the difference? I'm okay waiting till the late second, third round and getting 2 guys that get 15 to 17 points each. So, yeah. Again, I'm not going to reach. If I don't get a first-tier quarterback, if I don't get a top 5 receiver or a top 5 running back, I'm not really concerned. My strategy is always consistency. I don't want the home run hitters that get 25 points one week and 3 the next. And if I can manage to get 8 to 10 consistent players I'm always a very, very competitive team. I'm rarely the high point scorer in the league, but I think I've missed the playoffs once in 25 years. So I go for the consistency. So I'm not going to reach for anyone. I'm going to sit back, let everybody fight over getting somebody that they think's very important, and then I'm going to pick up the player right behind them for a lot less money.
Hey,
He's not
Dave.
being entirely honest there.
Yeah.
He's more than willing to snag somebody right before I pick. Trust me.
Hey, Dave, what do you think about, some of the listeners are probably saying to themselves, come on, guys, right? There's some luck involved, not Andrew Luck, but there is some just sheer, Irish luck involved in some of these drafts. Dave, what do you have to say about that? I mean, you have to build a foundation here, but tell me about what you think about how lucky is an auction draft at times.
It's not just an auction draft. It's really any kind of draft because you're banking on these guys. Like last year, for example, I'm drafting 2 wide receivers early, and my third pick, I got to get a running back. Well, I pick Arian Foster in the 3rd round, and he ends up being the number 3 or 4 running back for the whole season. So by waiting, that benefited me because he was great. People had injury concerns. I had injury concerns. Adrian Peterson gets arrested. Ray Rice gets arrested. And these guys are out for the year. So there's a lot of luck from that standpoint. But do your research. I think Quinn made a good point. Do you really want T.Y. Hilton or Mike Wallace? And until Hilton might be a little bit of a different story this year. But you're talking about guys who might catch 3 balls for 85 yards and a touchdown, or might get 1 catch for 5 yards. Or do you want a guy who's going to get the volume? You want Antonio Brown who's going to get targeted 13 times and catch 9 balls for 90 yards every time, and if he scores a touchdown, you get 15, and you're a genius. So there's some safety in there. You can't anticipate some of the situations that happened last year or really guys getting hurt, but guys do have injury concerns, and that's why they fall down draft boards, and you're taking them later than other guys, so they're just more reliable.
Quinn, closing comments here as we kind of wrap this up for auctions. What else can you say to the listeners out there besides the research? Have a plan, right? Stick to it. Watch the other guy, what they're bidding. What else can you say for final comments here?
My biggest advice would be an individual. You get trends on anything in life, and the people that watch the things and pick up the magazines and listen to the so-called experts who, by the way, really don't know much more about fantasy football than we do. You get the hot players, the Bishop Sankeys last year, the different people. And don't get caught up in the hype of what everyone else thinks is going to happen, because at the end of the day, nobody knows what's going to happen. We all think we know what's going to happen. So be an individual. Don't step up and reach.
Don't be like other people.
Don't step up and reach and try to be with the crowd and pay too much for somebody who may or may not be the right player for your team.
Well said. Well said. Dave, any closing comments before we wrap this show up on auction drafts for the listeners?
Yeah, make sure you understand what your budget is. What I like to do with an auction draft is budget a certain amount of money for each position. That doesn't mean that you don't adjust on the fly, but I would say maybe somewhere around $100 to $115 for receivers, $75 to $80 for quarterbacks. You can get for running backs. You can get cheaper on the quarterbacks. From my perspective, you can get Ben Roethlisberger this year for $7 or $8. You can get Tony Romo for $3. You can get Cam Newton, who might be a top 5 guy, for $2 or $3. That's a much better value than spending $35 on Aaron Rodgers, because you can distribute that money elsewhere. Don't get a defense other than the Seahawks for more than $1.
Very well said.
And Jonathan, if I could say one more thing, going with, stick with who you are. Dave and I have been friends for 25 years. We get along great, but when it comes to planning for fantasy, or we've gone on vacations together, Dave's a planner. He needs to know when we're going, where we're staying, what hotel we're at. And I'm the kind of guy who can just arrive in the city, and as long as it's a clean hotel, I'll show up and I'm fine. So if you're a planner, like Dave said, prepare. Know your budget. Know what you're looking for. Know what is ahead, what's in store for you. I can roll with it. I don't care what happens. I don't care what direction it goes. I'm knowledgeable enough to just go with the flow. So know your personality, know your league, like you said, know your opponents. If somebody's the guy every year that has to have 2 or 3 quarterbacks before he even takes a wide receiver, let him blow his wad on that. So just being aware of your surroundings, and do, like I tell people in business, do what helps you sleep at night. So if you're a planner, plan ahead, get everything lined up, get your ducks in a row. If you're a go with the flow guy like me, just let the auction take place and see what happens. Let the draft take place and just jump in when you feel it's right.
The hotel rooms are clean because I booked them 6 weeks in advance. You would have a clean place to sleep. Don't underestimate it. Start mock drafting now for auctions so there's no curveballs, so you know exactly what's coming. Try different scenarios. Pick quarterbacks first, pick running backs first, pick receivers first. See what feels right, and watch what crazy shit people do.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. No, I thank you guys both for all your comments. I thank you guys for being on again. And, you know, for me, Johnny B, I'm going to upside down draft all day long for the rest of my life. I'm convinced this strategy works. You got to build your foundation like Serena Williams, right? She's not going anywhere. Get those receivers first, get the running backs later, fill in your gaps, and then, you know, one thing I'll say as I kind of close up is wide receivers repeat at least 70% of the time. So I'll leave kind of the listeners with that, and hopefully you check out my book. You check us out on Twitter, right? UDD Works is my handle. Check out Dave at his. You know, Quinn's a big Steeler fan, who's also a hockey fan with Kings. But, you know, hey, thanks for tuning in to us. I can't wait for you to catch our next show. I've already grown a beard. I feel like I've aged here on the show.
Michael Sarah is growing up.
I really didn't think I would set a trend with the sunglasses. It was really, I went swimming with my son this afternoon, and I had red eyes. I didn't want our listeners to think I was a crack addict. So I threw the glasses on, but I might just have to roll with this.
Yeah, you might have to. Well, I mean, hey, that's all the stuff we got there. I'm gonna get started on this Draft Pro. I'm gonna break this out. Anybody wants to play, check it out. Maybe I'll even do an open box on YouTube here if anybody wants to check it out. This is an old game from '74, but hey, it had to do with auction. I'm glad you got to join us on Mock Ad Hoc.
That'll be on eBay for $5 next week.
And Johnny B, can you make a copy of that? I'd like to take it to my hairdresser. I want to copy that kid's haircut.
Yeah, you got it, man. 1974. Hey, any questions or comments, hit the show. It's info@upsidedowndrafting.com. For Dave, for Quinn, I'm Johnny B. Check us next time, man, on Mock Ad Hoc. Thanks for joining us. Have a good night.